welcome. Are the basic 8 guys there? Good. So today we continue once again with our carbon cycle. Last time we spoke at length what the carbon cycle is, what the spheres of the earth are. Then we said that the carbon cycle goes through certain stages. I mentioned them, but today we are going to look at each one of them and go a little bit deeper into them. So we don't waste much time, we'll go straight into it. The last time we met, what did we talk about? We talked about the fact that carbon circulates, or cycle is basically the circulation of carbon from the atmosphere into plants, animals, the soil, and back again into what? Into the atmosphere. And we discussed certain processes that will help in doing this. So today we are going to look at the stages involved in what? In carbon cycle. So the stages involved in carbon cycle. Stages involved in the carbon cycle. Stages involved in the carbon cycle. The first stage here is what? Is photosynthesis. The first stage. And this is the stage that removes, out of the four we mentioned, this is the only stage that removes what? The carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. How and why? So let's go straight into the note, read this and explain. Let's read. Photosynthesis. This is the stage where carbon is taken from the atmosphere. Plants remove carbon from the atmosphere by using energy of the sun to convert the carbon dioxide into carbon compounds, example glucose. These carbon compounds are transferred to animals when they feed on the plants. Oxygen is released in the world. It's released during the process as a byproduct. Now, what have we said here? We are looking at circulation of carbon. Carbon is in the atmosphere. How carbon gets into the biosphere, which is the living things? We are saying that the plants will absorb the energy from the sun. Once they absorb the energy from the sun, they are able to convert it in the presence of what? Of the chlorophyll they have to undergo the photosynthetic process and make what? And make food. And when they make this food, what happens? We will now go and feed on this, and we get the carbon transferred into our system. We accumulate the carbon into our system. Remember, now when we die, we return the carbon. If not everything goes, then we form what? We form the fossil fuel. Good. So that's what photosynthesis is about. The first stage of carbon cycle is what? Photosynthesis. And we are saying that is the stage where carbon comes out of what? Out of the atmosphere into the biosphere. Biosphere, once again, is a living thing. So now there's an equation representing the process I've said here. I'm saying that in photosynthesis, we have carbon dioxide in the atmosphere plus H2O, which is our water, in the presence of sunlight. In the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. And this produces an organic carbon compound, which is what? Glucose. That is C6H12, then O6, plus a byproduct, which is what? Oxygen. Now, this, after writing this is a chemical equation for photosynthesis. If you have to write down the chemical equation for photosynthesis, this is it. But anytime you write down a chemical equation, you need to balance. In fact, it's supposed to be a balanced chemical equation. I'll teach you balancing one day. So let's just balance this by putting 666. One day I'll explain how this 6 in front of the numbers came about. So we have 6 molecules of what? Of the carbon dioxide with 6 molecules of water in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, and we have what? Glucose. This is the chemical symbol for glucose. The chemical symbol for glucose. So take note of that. Then we also have what? We also have oxygen. This is a byproduct. Oxygen is the byproduct of photosynthesis. So the byproduct of photosynthesis, when we say byproduct, I mean that's not our main focus. The main focus in photosynthesis is to what? Is to produce this food. Alongside, we have oxygen, which is very important for living things like ourselves. Very important for us. Good. So this is an equation that represents what? Photosynthesis. It's a chemical equation. I can write the word equation. When we say word equation, instead of writing it, I'll just write carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll gives me glucose and oxygen. I write them in words. So we call it what? Word equation. It's already here in the notes. You can see that I gave you a word equation, which is carbon dioxide plus water. Then gives me what? In the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, glucose and what? And if I give you the chemical equation that we have on the board. So this is all about photosynthesis for now. In the carbon cycle, we don't talk much. All you should understand that photosynthesis removes the CO2 from the environment or the atmosphere and converts it in the presence of sunlight and this into this. And that is the first cycle. We get it from the atmosphere. From the definition, the process by which carbon moves from the atmosphere. So photosynthesis does the first one. Okay, so that's about that. Then respiration. You see, photosynthesis and respiration, they have a link. If you look at this here, the moment you take this arrow and turn it this way, you will get what? You will get respiration's chemical equation. The moment the arrow now faces it with this guy's absent, we'll get what? We'll get, because respiration is the process by which we will break down food in the presence of oxygen, in the presence of what? Of oxygen to release what? Energy. So we add energy to this. Then that becomes our main what? Our main product. The main product of respiration to produce what? Energy. If you look at the cells that we have discussed in the basic 7 class, the term that respiration is very important because that gives us what? The energy. So in the chemical formula, I'll add energy to it. Let's go into the notes and read. Let's read. Now, respiration. Oxygen from photosynthesis is required to break down food to release what? Energy. Already said that. This process also helps release carbon into what? Into the atmosphere in the form of what? Carbon dioxide. Because in the respiratory process, there's what? There's a breathing in and breathing what? Out. The breathing in process, we take in the oxygen, and the breathe out process, we give out what? The carbon dioxide. So you see, respiration releases carbon into the what? Into the atmosphere, and photosynthesis what? Absorbs carbon from the what? From the atmosphere. Compare what I'm saying. Go back to the diagram and see the arrows. You see that the living things that have, the animals will have some of the arrows going up into the atmosphere, and that means they are releasing CO2 into the what? Atmosphere. So respiration. That is respiration. And we have the word equation and we have what? The chemical equation. What's the word equation for respiration? I'm saying you can see that we have glucose. So I just want you to turn this. We have glucose in the presence of what? Oxygen to give us carbon dioxide and water plus what? Energy. And energy is the main product of what? Respiration. In photosynthesis, the main product is what? Glucose. The byproduct is what? This. I hope you get the point I'm making here. Good. So that is for that. So let me write the equation for you, the equation for respiration. So let me put the second one here. We have respiration. And for respiration, we need glucose, which is C6H12O6 plus oxygen. The presence of oxygen, this one, we don't need light and chlorophyll, but this gives me what? It gives me CO2, carbon dioxide, which is released into the atmosphere, plus water, that is 6H2O, then plus what? Energy. Energy. If we are treating respiration as a topic, this energy is in the form of what? Of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. We'll go deep into it. The energy is in the form of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. When the respiration is in the presence of oxygen, there's more ATP. In the absence, there's less, about 2 ATP and 38 ATP. When we are doing respiration topic, we'll talk about those ones. But today, we're not going deep into it. We are just learning the fact that respiration is part of the stages, and they will, or that process will release CO2 into the environment. So you can see the process that you absorb. So this photosynthesis took it. Then this guy gave it out. So take note of that. Ask that in section A. These are the following processes gives out CO2 into the environment. Then you should know that you can choose what? Respiration. Then the third one is decomposition. The third stage is what? Decomposition. Decomposition. Let's clean this, guys. We already have that. So our third stage here is what? Is decomposition. Decomposition. Now let's read from here. It is the breakdown of dead matter by microorganisms in the soil. Decompose. Listen to the term. To decompose means that composition means the things that make up an object or something composed of these. D means break the components. So decomposition means that we are breaking down the components of organic matter, and that is done by microorganisms. These microorganisms, which are called the decomposers, are very important, people. They are very important. Without decomposers in our ecosystem or on Earth, most of the dead things or the dead things will not rot. They'll be dead. And the land becomes filled with all these things, but their presence breaks down the dead organic matter. So decomposition or decomposers are very important. Let's go again. What's decomposition? The breakdown. So decomposition basically is what? Is breaking down of dead organic matter in the soil. Organisms that, so let me just put this one here. Let me just put this. The breakdown of organic matter. Organic matter. The breakdown of organic matter is what? Is decomposition. So decomposition simply means we are breaking down organic matter, and this breakdown is done by who help this to break down. We call them what? Decomposers. Decomposers. So decomposers are organisms that will break down the organic matter. Example, the fungi, the bacteria, they will work on this to break down. Example of a decomposer is this thing you see, the mold you see on your food. When they are fermented, when you keep kenke and those starchy foods for long, see those things form on, they help break it down. So they decompose the food. When plants and animals die, we are reading from the notes. When plants and animals die, they decay or rot, and the carbon which is stored in them. Remember that these plants fed on the water, these animals fed on the plants. And in fact, the plants, after manufacturing the food, also kept some. And we also feed on them. So we both have carbon in our system. Now, when we die, we need the decomposers to break us down. So as they are breaking us down, one of the components they will find is carbon. You get the point I'm making here? Good. So let's go. They said that when plants and animals die, they decay or rot, and the carbon which is stored in their body is released into the soil and water, which may be used in a new plant or in a small microorganism. Good. So that is about decomposition. Very, very simple. All we want to know here is that the plants or the animals will die. Then we need these organisms to break them down to give us to return the carbon back into the soil. Remember that the definition says that carbon goes back into the soil. So once again, these guys will also release carbon into the soil, not the atmosphere. These guys release the carbon into the atmosphere. So respiration releases carbon into the atmosphere. So here we say they do they release CO2 into the, or let me just say carbon. They release carbon into the atmosphere. Then these guys will release carbon. They release carbon into the soil. They release carbon into the soil. So at the end of the day, you release, also release. But where do you release it into? Atmosphere. I put in the soil. Good. Then the last one, or the fourth one, is what? Is combustion or burning. We have combustion or burning. We have combustion or burning. And this is what happens in the vehicles and in the factories. If you look into the cycle, you see the factory drawn there. Yes. What happens there is what? Is burn. They burn the fossil fuels that is formed when these guys break down, and some of them are kept in the soil for far too long. They form what we call the fossil fuel or crude oil. Then we get that, now we begin burning it. Once we burn them to run our engines, then we also release what? The carbon into the atmosphere. So this occurs when fuel reacts with oxygen. Combustion occurs when fuel reacts with oxygen to produce energy, usually heat, carbon dioxide and water. So for combustion, we are saying that it occurs when fuel So what fuel am I talking about here? I'm talking of petrol, I'm talking of diesel, I'm talking of kerosene. When these guys react with oxygen, they release energy, usually in the form of what? Of heat. They also release what? Carbon dioxide. That's why when you burn something, you feel that the thing is hot or there's heat being produced because energy is being what? Released from the fossil fuel. So you are saying combustion also releases what? Releases carbon dioxide into what? Into the atmosphere. So they will release, when you burn, it goes into the what? The atmosphere. So these guys will release, that's the red. These guys releases carbon into the atmosphere. So this is what they also do. These guys will release carbon into the atmosphere. Take note of all these and be fine. Now let's look at the importance of the carbon cycle. The importance of the what? Of the carbon cycle. Importance of carbon cycle. Importance of carbon cycle. How is this carbon cycle important to us? How is this carbon cycle important to us? Good. One importance of the carbon cycle. It releases atmospheric carbon dioxide, which helps plants to manufacture their own food. So importance of the carbon cycle. Importance of course, the carbon cycle is very important. Of the carbon cycle. One important is that it releases what? It releases carbon dioxide into the what? Into the atmosphere, which helps plants manufacture their own food. Remember that in the processes we mentioned, there are three processes or there are three stages that will release the carbon into the atmosphere. They're also important because if these guys don't release the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, how then would the plants get the carbon dioxide for them to prepare their food? So it's very important. So one of the importance, let's write, is what? Is that the release of what? Of carbon dioxide, which helps plants manufacture food. So one important is, let me just say, the release of CO2 for certainly plants to manufacture or make food, manufacture food. So this is it. For plants to, that's one importance of the carbon cycle. It's very important. Good. Oxygen is produced for living things to respire or for living things doing what? Respiration. So we are saying another importance is that when these guys prepare their food, because of the cycle, they have the chance to prepare what? Food. In the course of preparation of their food, they release what? Oxygen. So another importance is that what? Oxygen, which is O2 gas, is released into the atmosphere, for respiration. Good. So this is another important. Then the next one, which is the third one, so the surface of the earth would have been cold to live on if there is no carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. If there's no carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the earth would have been what? Would have been very, very cold, and we cannot live here. This is because why? This is because carbon dioxide serves as a blanket which traps some of the sun's energy that falls on the wall, on the ground from escaping. So carbon dioxide has that ability to trap the heat. That's why when it becomes too much too, it's what we call global warming. Because it's what? Global warming. Are we okay with this? Are we getting this thing? Good. So let's go. So we are the importance of what? The carbon cycle. So the carbon cycle helps to release what? Carbon dioxide for plants to manufacture their food. In the course of doing that, CO2 is released into the world, the atmosphere for respiration. Then carbon dioxide helps to keep the earth what? Warm. How does it help to keep the earth warm? It serves as a blanket that traps some of the sunlight and prevent them from what? From escaping. So another importance is what? It keeps the earth warm. Very, very important. If not that, most of you be shivering by now. And once again, when the carbon dioxide concentration becomes more, that means we get more of the heat on the earth, and that causes what? Greenhouse effect and global warming and the rest. Okay, so that's the importance. One thing is very important of what? Carbon cycle. Ways by which carbon cycle is disrupted. How do we disrupt the carbon cycle? It's very important too, but there are certain things we do that destroys or destroys the carbon cycle. Let's see some of the ways. Deforestation is one of them. When we are cutting down trees without replacing them. If you cut the trees, who are those going to perform the photosynthetic process? No one. So you disrupt what? The carbon cycle. Now, increase in carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. That's another effect of what? Of the destruction. Let's go to the ways. One way by which you can do that is industrialization. We are building industries. Everybody is burning something to produce something. And that all those industries run on what? Run on engines. And these engines use what? Petrol. You get the point I mean? So they release carbon dioxide into the world, into the atmosphere. And that's one way by which they destroy the whole atmosphere. They destroy the carbon cycle. Why? I've said that when the carbon is good, you understand? It's good. When we are getting the normal amount of it, it's fine. But when the carbon dioxide concentration increases, when it increases, then the earth is going to be very, very hot. And we experience climate change and all those. Good. Then the next one is what? Pollution. People polluting the environment. Once again, the air pollution, the land pollution. That is why decomposition is very important. Even that the land would have been polluted by now. And we have a lot of what? Of the carbon. Good. So these are ways by which we can disrupt what? The carbon cycle. Ways by which the carbon cycle is disturbed or distracted. Now let's look at the effects of disruption of the carbon cycle. What are some of the effects? How do that destruction affect our carbon cycle? It causes what we call what? Global warming. It causes global warming and greenhouse effect. We'll look at what these things are. Now, increase in carbon dioxide concentration in the what? In the atmosphere. Another effect is that there is increase in what? In carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. And it goes a long way to do what? To deplete our ozone layer. A layer that protects us from the direct sun rays of the world. Of the direct sun rays, direct sun rays. Good. So that's what the ozone does. The ozone layer protects us from the what? From the rays of the sun, which is a UV ray. Good. Now let's see what greenhouse effect is. Greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect is the gradual warming of the atmosphere caused by increase in the amount of greenhouse gases. All that we are saying here is that when we increase the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere, when carbon dioxide concentration increases, when this thing increases, because it keeps the earth warm, when it becomes too much, we have what we call greenhouse effect, which is the gradual warming of the atmosphere caused by the increase in amount of greenhouse gases. This is a greenhouse gas. This is a greenhouse gas. In fact, what are greenhouse gases? I've defined all of them there, so we'll look at them. So let's go into this. So let's read. Read with me. Greenhouse effect is the what? Is the gradual warming of the atmosphere caused by increase in amount of greenhouse gases. What are greenhouse gases? Greenhouse gas is any gas or any gaseous compound capable of absorbing infrared radiations, thereby trapping heat in the atmosphere. Again, greenhouse gases or greenhouse gas is any gaseous compound capable of absorbing infrared radiation. That is, the radiation from the sun is infrared radiations or the UV light. Now, thereby what? Trapping heat in the atmosphere. Example of such gases is the CO2 gas and the what? And the methane gas. You can see that from the note. And the methane what? Gas. Are you okay with this? So we have defined greenhouse effect. What is greenhouse effect? Greenhouse effect is the is the gradual. So it's a gradual process, a gradual warming of the atmosphere. The atmosphere begins to warm gradually. Why? Because there's increase in the carbon dioxide concentration or increase in greenhouse gases. When greenhouse gases increases in the atmosphere, then we have the earth or the atmosphere of the earth becomes what? Warm. So if this is the earth and this is the atmosphere of the earth, if this thing becomes warm gradually, then we say we have experienced what? When it becomes warm gradually, so this is the atmosphere. the atmosphere, and the atmosphere becomes what? Becomes warm gradually. Then we have what we call the greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect. And this greenhouse effect is caused by what? By greenhouse gases. So greenhouse gases, example CH4, which is methane gas. Then another one is what? The CO2, which we have been talking of all this while. So these guys, these are F. This guy here is the F. These are F. Then we have these greenhouse gases, a lot of them here. This guy, a lot. It will cause the gradual warming of the atmosphere, which is this short gases here. Then we have what? Greenhouse effect. So what is greenhouse effect? It is a gradual warming of the atmosphere or the Earth atmosphere as a result of what? Increase in greenhouse gases. So you can understand it the most important. You can change the definition, but understand it very, very well important. Good. What are greenhouse gases? Any gaseous compound that does what? That absorb infrared radiations are greenhouse gases. Okay. Then global warming. Global warming refers to the increase in temperature in the Earth atmosphere due to what? Greenhouse effects. Global warming is now we say we have global warming, that means now the temperature has what? Increased. Here in greenhouse effect, it was a gradual process. Now it has warmed down. Therefore, we have graduated from greenhouse effect to global warming. Global warming. That means the atmosphere of the Earth is now what? Warm. So this refers to the increase in temperature in the Earth atmosphere due to greenhouse effect. Due to the gradual increasing, it gets to a point. Where what? We now experience global warming, where every part of the Earth is hot. Yeah, you want to live here, then you have to make sure you live in what? In ice water. Okay, so let's go. Now, causes of global warming. I want us to finish this. Yeah, we're almost done. Causes of global warming. What is global warming? What causes global warming? We have bush burning, causes global warming. Industrialization. We have deforestation. We have the use of chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs. The use of chlorofluorocarbons. Volcanoes can also cause that because they also release carbon into the atmosphere. Let's go once again. Causes of global warming. Let's read this one from here. Very simple. Causes of global warming, we have bush burning, industrialization, we have deforestation, the use of chlorofluorocarbons, then volcanoes can also cause that. Then we have effects of global warming. Can have a positive effect or a negative effect. So everything is a positive and negative sign. Good. So the negative effects are it causes the level of sea-to to rise. So there's an increase in the sea level. Good. Severe storms, drought, there's no water. Then we have what? We have famine. There's no food. The destruction of what? Species begin to die or become more extinct. Okay, then positive effects, yes, it will make the plants grow faster because they will get more of the carbon dioxide. That's a positive effect. Then crops will produce more. Of course, when the crops are manufacturing food more, then they're producing what? More. And it makes life better. When we have carbon dioxide, we can breathe properly. The carbon dioxide helps to release our oxygen so that we can get our air or we can get our energy. So carbon dioxide is also important. And that is why we are saying that. Remember that to every side there's a positive and a negative. So gradually we have come to the end of carbon cycle. Very simple. Very simple. The key point here is for you to know how to define global warming, how to define greenhouse effects, and what greenhouse gases are. It's very simple. It starts with what? With the greenhouse effects. It's the gradual. I just want to get a definition before I leave here. It's the gradual warming of the Earth's surface as a result of what? Greenhouse gases. Now, when the temperature increases to a point, then we have what? We have global warming. So global warming is when there's an increase in the temperature, but it started gradually from what? From the greenhouse effect. People, this is where we end our lessons on what? On carbon cycle. So we are done with carbon cycle. In our next class, we'll tackle another topic, and you have the same information as you have here. I hope you have enjoyed yourself. I have enjoyed myself, and I thank you all for joining the class. You know what to do. As tell a friend, you tell another friend to subscribe to the channel because there are more interesting things that is come to happen here. I'm to give you more information. Thank you very much for joining our class.